Karnataka and outside Karnataka, and he's a leading management expert. He has agreed to deliver talk on mergers and acquisitions in Indian corporate sector. I welcome Professor T. Mallikarjunappa on behalf of University of Mysore. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Today, our registrar, R. Shivappa, is with us. Sir has served in different capacities. He is the registrar of our university. Prior to that, he was serving in rural development, rural water supply, steering several projects, World Bank projects, and is a social scientist working in MSW department. I requested our registrar to inaugurate this program. I welcome our registrar R. Shivappa for this program. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
I welcome the students, scholars, and faculty members of different departments of University of Mysore, Commerce Department and MBA Department, and also the faculty members of affiliated colleges. All the students have joined here. I request all of them to attend the program, and also I welcome them. Now I request our registrar to inaugurate the program formally. Sir, over to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And as a special initiative from last two, as a special initiative, University of Mysore has taken a very good initiative. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Your voice is very clear.
As a very special initiative for last 1 month. ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ ಸರ್?
ಸರ್ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್.
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್. ಸರ್ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾ ಸರ್?
ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿ ಸರ್. ನೋ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಸರ್.
Okay, sir. So as we have University of Mysore is pioneering in so many initiatives, and we are for last 1 year, 1.5 years, Madhavappa has assumed office University Industry Interaction Center. University has witnessed a kind of a very active active interaction in industries and the academia. As I have witnessed, several webinars have been conducted, and also a lot of interaction is going on for constructive purposes. I think that will fetch a very good and it's going to benefit academicians and our industry people. And very recently we had a kind of a meeting with the Honorable Vice Chancellor and also including syndicate members and all. And during that time we did discuss about several initiatives which university should take up, and also industry people are very much interested to interact with academicians. Usually academicians are very structured, and they are very clear about the concepts and also theory as such. So when it comes to implementation part, we are so we need to experiment. We need are available with trace, because in a day-to-day run they are seeing the realities. They are changing the methodology, changing the approach and all. So definitely when professors and the industry be possible on a day-to-day basis, but definitely occasionally as and when situation demands. So if they interact on a particular issue based, so it's going to benefit both of them, both academicians as well as industry people. Am I audible, sir?
Yes. Please continue, sir.
Yeah. So in that way, I think in a long run, university would benefit, and especially our students who are joining for commerce courses, maybe from a social work angle, or maybe any people, the economics people, especially economics, and these people, they will even science departments. So when they experiment, some of the things, life sciences people, say biochemistry, biotechnology, sericulture, and these people. So the industry means not exactly people who are involved in urban areas and things like that. The rural industries also, rural sector.
Huh? Okay.
The audio,
Okay.
connection problem is in sir.
Sir,
Sir, I think you are on mute. Sir,
Some disturbance.
Yes, sir. Yes.
In between, I don't know what's happening with the Zoom.
Yeah, please,
maybe some application errors. I wish we will have a wonderful interaction in upcoming years on several aspects. I hopefully see we can have a separate interactions pertaining to microbiology, biochemistry, or maybe the management side, and even from a social work side. Even so, social work, coming from social work background, we have. We are so social work I was talking about. So we are having a regular contact with nearly 150 service organizations in and around Mysore. So we learn a lot from these people, and also we also invite people to our departments. Similarly, after Mahadevappa sir has assumed this office, we are really geared up, and also we are tuning ourselves into a kind of a very good, fruitful academic interactions with news, and would fetch benefits in a long run. I think this initiative should be continued, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
So let this deliberations go on. I think what I suggest is each and every department tailor-made arrangements can be made. Tailor-made arrangements suiting to the departments. So those kind of things we can think about, sir. Maybe industry people also, not calling everybody. Whoever let us
invite on a tailor basis,
some
sir,
sector, some sector. So based on yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Already we are planning for MSW department on 27th. We are inviting JKT's HR manager, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. Our university is a very vast, and we have nearly 54 departments doing great initiatives. So suiting to the different departments, we can
yes, sir. Definitely
have these industry interactions accordingly. I think I wish I wish Professor Mahadevappa sir would carry forward these initiatives, and we will have wonderful.
Thank you, sir.
Learning experience with the industries, and also they may have because definitely they will also benefit from the academic. Yes. Thank you. I wish all the best for this wonderful seminar. Yeah, wonderful online interaction.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, I request Professor T. Mallikarjunappa to take over this session. Yes, PPT. Sir, you can share the PPT and start your lecture.
I'll share the PPT, but before that, let me just
yes, sir.
give some type of an introduction before I start sharing the PowerPoints. If there is any disturbance in my voice, you may have to tell me. I hope right now I am audible.
Yes, sir. Clear.
Yeah.
Voice is clear, sir.
Yes. Professor Mahadevappa, thank you very much for inviting me and asking me to talk to the students and faculty members and researchers of the University of Mysore.
Thank you, sir.
This place is dearer to me, dearer to my heart, dearer to my family, everybody. I studied in the University of Mysore at Maharaja's College for my degree. Then I did my PG in Manas Gangotri, PhD in Manas Gangotri, and therefore I'm extremely happy to talk to the students at the University of Mysore. I still remember my days at Maharaja's College, Saraswatipuram, 9th main hostel. And I really become nostalgic when I come to Mysore and then start visiting some of these places. So let me now directly take this topic that has been assigned, or rather chosen by me, about the mergers and acquisitions. I was anticipating that mergers and acquisitions will take back seat, especially from March 2020 onwards, till the normalcy is restored. Although there was slowdown, but my anticipation and expectation of backseat is not really true, because a lot of deals are taking place in the boardrooms of different companies and in different countries. This is not just within the country, but across the countries. Therefore, the pandemic doesn't seem to have affected this trend of mergers and acquisitions. M&As continue to be most important for the corporates, and they are attracting lots of attention from private equities and also individuals. Therefore, I feel that academicians have lots of things to learn from the trends that we have seen in M&As, especially during the pandemic period. And in India, these deals have big ticket deals have taken place in the M&A space, especially involving such large corporates. Again, the expectation was that since there is nationwide lockdown and then lockdowns in different countries and all transport was shut, the flights were canceled, these deals are likely to be postponed indefinitely. But thanks to the technology, the deals have actually come true. And large number of M&As have taken place in India and also at the international level. Therefore, before we move on, let's just get into the basics of how an organization grows. When an organization starts its business, all of us as commerce and management students and faculty know that we have different forms of organization: sole trader, partnership, and then limited liability companies. Within that limited liability companies, you have public limited companies, public private limited companies. Now, when in the M&A space, there can be mergers and acquisitions involving 2 or more entities that involve any forms of organization. But most popular is 2 or more companies, but that does not prohibit a sole trader business being acquired by somebody. But most of the deals seem to be taking place between different companies. Maybe a public limited company taking over a private limited company, a private limited company taking over a public limited company. Normally, the bigger entities taking over the smaller entities, that is, bigger entities merging with the smaller entities. These are, and then the stake sales, limited stake sales taking place. These are the different forms in which the M&As are happening. So if you get into the basics of how an organization grows, we can divide the forms of growth of organization into 2 broad categories. One is the organic mode of growing. The other one is the inorganic mode of growing. An organic mode of growing, if a business has started, they try to add a new business. They may add a new product line. They may add new products within a product line. They may go for capacity expansion. They may go for setting up plants in different places within the country. And if they feel that there is adequate demand at the international level, they might start expanding their business to different countries. This is an organic way of growing where the company grows from being small to a bigger entity by setting up either plants in different places or expanding the capacity in the same place. Different places could be within the country or across the globe. If the companies grow across the globe and become big enough, a small business may assume the status of MNC, multinational corporation, or TNC, transnational corporations. This is an organic way of growing. Now, there are limitations for organic growth, or way of growing. Now, what could be those limitations? The existing company or any type of business organization may have limitation in the form of, let us say, the capacity. They may have limitations in the form of they have some technology, but that technology is not smart enough to expand beyond a particular limit. And then you have the promoters of the company, you have the board of directors of the company, employees, top management of these companies. They may have perhaps the limited knowledge of the different geographies in which the product may be sold, and they may be willing to expand. And when they are willing to expand, there may be problems in terms of the awareness and familiarity with these markets. If they are not too familiar with the market, going and setting up a new business in a strange place might take too long a time. It might take a time. It might take time. I'm not saying that it cannot happen. It can happen, but it might take time. That's one. Then again, for the companies within a particular product, there might be limitation in the form of how far they can go, how far they can expand the capacity, and how far they can set up multiple plants within the country and also abroad. So when they face with these limitations, let's say of human resources, limitation of technology, limitation of the familiarity with the market, limitation of expansion of capacity within a specific product line, then these entities might think of a different way of growing. And that different way of growing could be an inorganic mode of growing. Inorganic mode of growing. What is this inorganic mode of growing? This is where the M&A space comes into picture. Inorganic growth is in the form of mergers and acquisitions. Let's say there is a pharmaceutical company in India, and that company wants to expand their business into, let's say, Canada and then USA, because they make a survey and find that there is a lot of demand for the products that they are producing. Right now they are exporting, but they start thinking that if there is a place of manufacture in US, in Canada, where the market exists, they would be able to sell better and push their sales, increase their sales, and maybe profitability and some of these things. So when they think in terms of these, one way of, again, expanding is they can go and set up a place of manufacture in US and then Canada. Another way of growing could be there is already a small entity which is operating in the pharmaceutical space, and this pharmaceutical company, which is headquartered in India, feels that it could be a good business proposition to take over the control or to take over the entire entity, which is located, let's say, in USA. In
Sir,
Canada.
sir,
Yes.
sir,
Yeah.
PPT are sharing, sir?
No, not yet. I'll share.
Not yet. Okay, that's right. Yes, sir. Yes,
I'll
sir.
share that.
Yes.
I have not started sharing the PPTs,
Okay.
but I'll share.
Okay, sir.
So this company starts exploring this possibility of taking over the existing business, and they look for these entities and find that these entities do exist in USA, do exist in Canada, and they negotiate with the top management whether we could merge together or we could acquire control, majority stake in these companies. So this is the way the mergers and acquisitions can take place. So let me now start sharing my PPTs. I have PPTs. I didn't want to share these PPTs in the beginning itself, because once you start putting the PPTs, sometimes people will start switching off their ears. I didn't want that to happen, and therefore let's start sharing our PPTs. Maybe I'll go on till 11:15 or 11:20. Then I'll throw open the entire floor for discussion. You can ask any type of questions. I will talk basic things about the mergers and acquisitions first. And then I'll also talk about the types of research that is being conducted. And maybe if the time permits, I'll also talk about the methodology that is involved in the M&A research, and share some of my own papers which we have written in this area of M&A. So I'll just minimize and start sharing my PPTs. Just tell me whether my screen is visible.
Oh, sir.
Visible?
Illa, sir. Not yet, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Now it is visible, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
There will be some time gap between
yes, sir.
I putting this on the screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I made it full screen now.
Yes, sir.
Visible, right?
Yeah, it is visible clearly. Yes, sir.
Mergers and acquisitions in Indian corporate sector.
Yes, sir.
That's the topic. Now, a lot of things are being talked about corporate restructuring these days. I'll introduce very briefly about what is happening in the corporate restructuring space. Corporate restructuring through M&As is considered as an important means of inorganic growth. This is what I was talking about. In a merger, two or more companies combine their operations, whereas in an acquisition, they purchase the assets or the securities of an existing entities. Now, if you start talking about what could be the motives or objectives of mergers, these are some of the important motives. There can be other motives. If you want to add subsequently, you can add the additional motives to enhance profitability and then growth. I was just talking that if a small business starts expanding into new geographies and new countries, maybe they feel that the growth would be faster, and there are markets where the growth can be faster than the existing market, and therefore they want to grow at a faster rate. So they want to expand their business. And if they want to expand their business, one of the ways in which they expand their business could be acquire a company that is already existing there. They find that the scales, that is economies of scale will start operating if the entity becomes larger, and therefore the profitability will increase. That could be yet another motive for the mergers and acquisition. Then The existing company finds that there are existing brands, and those brands are extremely important, and brands become extremely important to capture the markets. And they again feel that, again, to establish the brands in the market and to build the brand equity, it takes longer time, and therefore they feel, let me acquire the existing brands so I can grow faster and my sales can increase and capacity can also increase. So acquiring the existing brands could be the second motive. Expand to a new market. Company is operating within a country now, and they feel that they want to expand their business into a new country. That can be one. Company is existing in a limited geography within the country. They want to expand. Let's say South Indian company wants to expand their business into North India, an entirely strange place which they have not yet explored as of now. So new market could be within the country, outside the country. Acquire new customers. There are existing customers for a company, and they feel that this company has larger customer base or customer base which is unique to this line of business. And if they acquire this company, the existing customers of the existing company would become our new customers, and therefore we would be able to establish much better. So that's to acquire new customers. Access new technology. Now, when I was a student, my professor in the University of Mysore gave a topic for assignment. The topic that he gave, Professor J.K. Irani, the topic that he gave for assignment when I was in the first year is technology policy for India with special reference to Bell-Siemens controversy. BHEL is a leading manufacturer of the turbines which are used in power generation, and the main competitor is Siemens. So what should be the technology policy for India? There was a controversy going on between these two companies, BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, and also Siemens. So if a company feels that there is a company which is having superior technology than its own technology, and they feel that this technology would be of immense help for expanding into new geography, going for capacity expansion, or maybe to minimize the operating cost of the company, or to produce the products more efficiently than what they are doing now. So they might feel that new technology is of immense use. And how do we get this new technology? Company may not be willing to spare this technology. Therefore, they might think, let me acquire this company, merge this company with my company. So that could be yet another motive for mergers and acquisition. Next, in a free market economy where everybody is free to compete with every other company or business, competition heats up, and when the competition heats up, companies might start feeling the heat of this competition and may start feeling that if the competition heats up with the newcomers and existing companies, my market share might come down, and therefore I would face the competition much better by merging with another company, acquiring another company. So yet another motive could be to face the competition. Now, to venture into an entirely new product line which this company has not yet explored. The company is in a particular type of business, and they feel that they want to venture into an entirely new type of business. The classic example that you can cite for this could be Reliance venturing into the mobile space. Reliance Group did have the mobile space earlier, but when the Reliance Group was split between the two brothers, Mukesh and then Anil Ambani, the telecom business went to Anil Ambani Group, ADAG, and Mukesh Ambani Group did not have the telecom business. RIL in 2016, October 2016, 45-minute speech by Mukesh Ambani brought the Jio into the Indian telecom market. So if they want to get into the new product lines, they might go for the mergers and acquisitions. In management, we talk about 2 plus 2 is equal to not 4, but 5, maybe 10 also. Now, how does it become 5 or 10 instead of 4? The sum of all parts is not necessarily just this. When you assemble different parts, a vehicle might start moving. And if we feel that there are two entities which can come together and then start giving us a lot of benefits in terms of facing competition, in terms of bringing down our cost of capital, cost of production, and also increase the profitability, varieties of these benefits. So corporates might start feeling that there is synergy if we start coming together. So that could be yet another motive for mergers and acquisitions. Now, M&As offer several advantages to the companies. One, the last point which I told in the motives is synergy. If there are questions on this, I'll come back to these things. I will not explain too much because I have some more things to show about this M&As. So create synergy for the existing or merged entity. It offers this advantage. Enhance the market and growth potential of the existing company. That is, there is a specific market and then you are getting into a new market, and that new market is growing at a faster rate than the existing market, and therefore the overall market for the company is growing at a higher rate and market penetration is much faster if we take over this business or merge with this company. That could be yet another advantage. Enhance the market and growth potential. Diversify the company. In commerce and management, we say, do not put all eggs into a single basket, but diversify. That is, divide these eggs into different baskets so that if one egg is spoiled, it does not affect the other eggs. So in diversification, the logic here is if one line of business is doing well now, possibly the other line of business may not be doing well because of the business cycles, and therefore we feel that the company should be in different lines of business rather than being in a single line of business. So if this is the philosophy of the company, diversify the company into different product lines is yet another advantage that the M&A space create for the corporates. Enhance the profitability prospects because of the synergy, because of bringing down the cost of capital, cost of production, and then operation of the economies of scale, and then optimizing the resources. Perhaps the profitability of the merged entity could be enhanced. That is much higher than the profitability of the earlier single standalone companies. Then optimize the resources. When you bring two or more entities together, the resources and then the capacities which were idle earlier and were being wasted could be optimized. Then enhance the company's market value. You know, when companies are operating in small geographies, it's not so well known. When they start operating in different lines of business, you cater to the needs of multiple customer bases. You also cater to the needs of new geographies which were not explored earlier. And therefore, companies' market value will naturally increase because of expanding customer base, expanding the market into new geographies, and then offering products at much better value than what it was existing earlier. So enhance company's market value. Enhance strategic competitiveness of the company. There can be companies which are giving competition, and then if this company feels that facing the competition is much more difficult if they are standalone entities, but if they take over an existing business or merge an existing business with its own business, then they would be able to meet the competition much better. So the M&As can enhance strategic competitiveness of the company because now it's a combined entity and they are able to take on the competitors with much vigor and much more strength, both in terms of, let's say, size of the sales, size of the assets, size of the market, size of the customer base, and then size of the capital that they have. So varieties of these things would enhance the strategic competitiveness of the company. Apart from improvement in the market share, the company can benefit from operating and financial synergies. So when we talk about synergies could happen in the market space, could happen in the financial field, then within the production line, the operating cost, there could be synergies. M&As by Indian companies, in fact, lots can be written about the M&A space. Let's just recall what was the scope for mergers and acquisitions before the liberalization measures were initiated by the government of India in 1991, led by P.V. Narasimha Rao as the Prime Minister of this country and Dr. Manmohan Singh as the Finance Minister of this country. Before the liberalization measures were initiated by the government of India, there was limited scope for M&As because it required license, it required permission for every transaction. Even if a company wants to go for a new product line, they had to take license from the government of India. If they want to go for a new market and expand the capacity for varieties of these things, the permission was required, and therefore there was limited scope for companies. I'm not saying that it was not existing, but the scope for mergers and acquisition was limited. Now, India experienced almost an unprecedented balance of payments crisis starting from 1989 and culminating in 1991. And ultimately, balance of payments crisis and many more factors led to the initiation of liberalization measures by the government of India when the new government came and was set up in 1991. So we see for the first time an academician turned central banker being invited to be the finance minister and lead the entire finance ministry in initiating the liberalization measures. And the most famous LPG, liberalization, globalization, and privatization measures that were initiated by the government of India have led to a full circle where the government of India had to literally go to the multilateral agencies like the World Bank and IMF and request for the much needed, loans for the crisis that the government of India was experiencing in terms of tiding over the crisis of balance of payments. So they had to go and ask for the loans, both from the IMF and also World Bank. And it has now come a full circle from being borrower from IMF to tide over the balance of payments crisis. India has now become lender to IMF because India has enough foreign exchange reserves and is able to lend to IMF, International Monetary Fund, to help similar countries which are in crisis to manage their balance of payments. So post this liberalization measures, Indian corporates started initiating the M&As, mergers, and then acquisitions. Now, if you look at the numbers and then the number of deals that were taking place earlier, from a meager 115 deals with a value of about $1.6 billion in 1996, number of M&As surged to 1,008 with a value of $39.4 billion. Peaking in 2018, $1,870. Even the value of these was $119.8 billion. So from $1.6 billion in 1995, we see $119.8 billion in 2008. And the space is increasing over a period of time. We have seen a number of deals that are taking place. M&As in India during the pandemic period. Now, I was telling about this. My expectation was that the pandemic will severely hit the M&A space, not only in India, but across the globe, because there is a global lockdown. Within the country, there is a lockdown, and then the transport has been shut. Entire airlines have been canceled, and therefore there is no way they can negotiate on the M&A space. Therefore, I was expecting that the M&As will come down and slow down quite substantially. But thanks to the technology, this has not happened, although there was slowdown, but substantial decline and slowdown has not taken place. The boardrooms seem to have come together using the technology the way we are using the technology now. You are in Mysore, Kollegal, and maybe Chamarajanagar and various places. I'm in Kerala, sitting in Peria, a very small village which is in Kasaragod district, but we are able to connect each other without all of us traveling to a single place like Manas Gangotri and not even assembling in this place. So this type of the help that the technology has started giving seem to have been used by the companies to negotiate on various M&As. I'm giving some of the examples, not all the examples. Facebook has acquired 10% stake for $5.7 billion. Google has acquired 7.7% stake for $4.5 billion. And Geo Platform has raised about $20 billion. Not a small amount. Please understand, for the entire country in 1995, it was $1.6 billion. Now, Geo alone, during the pandemic period, has raised $20 billion. Nationwide stringent lockdown, but we see a single company raising $20 billion. Can somebody unmute and then tell me? Maybe I'll complete this slide. RIL has agreed to acquire Futures Group. Of course, there is a controversy that is going on for about 3.8.
Kenneth, audio. Call for
Am I audible, Madhav?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Here, connection is perfectly fine. I don't know how it got exited.
Okay, sir. Please continue, sir. Yeah.
Because there is no connection problem from here.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I'll start sharing. In the meanwhile, others can, if somebody can unmute and then tell me you had, Facebook acquiring 10% stake and then Google acquiring 7.7% stake.
Okay.
Can you tell me in which company they acquired these stakes?
Participants may answer the question.
Any of the participants. If you can answer, that would be good.
Facebook has acquired stake in which company? Google or Facebook?
Is that visible screen?
Yes. The screen is visible. Yes, please run, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Correct.
$5.7 billion. 10% stake Facebook has acquired and Google has acquired 7.5% stake. And this platform, all of you, without any exception, are using. You are using the products of this company. So it's not a strange company for all of you. You are using these products, and therefore, if one of you can unmute, even if the answer is wrong, it doesn't matter. Please come forward and then tell.
I request any of the participants can unmute and answer the question.
Can somebody come forward?
Sir, did Facebook acquired WhatsApp?
Facebook acquiring WhatsApp is one, but maybe I'll come to that deal little later. But Facebook acquired 10% stake for $5.7 billion. This is an Indian company. Your answer for WhatsApp and Facebook is right, but this specific thing, 10% stake for $5.7 billion, that's something that, all of you will know this. You please attempt, you would be right.
Yes, sir, I will try, sir.
10% stake of Geo.
Yes. Please tell.
Yes.
Yeah, somebody is telling. You have to be louder, little louder.
Zero, you mean?
Yes, that's the right answer. Facebook has acquired 10% stake in Geo. Again, Google, again, same platform, Geo platform. And answer is already here, but maybe you didn't notice. Geo platform has raised $20 billion in the lockdown period. RIL has agreed. If you look into the entire deals that RIL did with the different companies around the world, these are not the only deals that RIL did during the pandemic period. This type of negotiation has been there. If some of you recall, Government of India brought in what is called as IBC in 2016. Anybody who is, what is this IBC? 2016, Government of India brought in IBC.
Anyone can answer. Yeah.
Anyone. I'm telling you, even if that answer is not right, I would be happy if you come forward and tell me what is IBC.
Insolvency, you are not aware. Insolvency.
Okay. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code,
Code.
Government of India brought in 2016, and that has, in fact, sent shivers down most of the corporates, because if the corporates fail to pay the amount that is demanded by its lenders, then these are referred to IBC. Not that insolvency provisions were not there earlier. Insolvency provisions and bankruptcy provisions were spread in different legislations across different, they were spread in different legislations, but IBC consolidated all these things into a single legislation. And there is a time-bound period. Within 6 months, they have to liquidate the amount and all this. There are different provisions. And because of this, companies in India have started getting worried. If they are not able to liquidate the loan within the period, then it is referred to IBC. And if it is referred to IBC, then there are consequences associated with these things. Therefore, the Reliance, one of the biggest corporate groups in India, also started worrying. Reliance, both the groups of Reliance, especially the elder brother Mukesh Ambani, started getting worried because Anil Ambani Group's many companies were in trouble because of the huge debts that they were carrying on the balance sheets. Because of the huge debts they were carrying on the balance sheet, some of the debts they were not able to pay, both the principal and then interest, and some of the group companies of Anil Ambani started being referred to IBC. Therefore, Mukesh Ambani Group also started getting worried, and RIL at that time, not very long ago, just about 2 years back, was carrying about 3 lakh crores of debt on its balance sheet. So if there is a default with such a huge debt on the balance sheet of the company, then they could also get into these types of things. And therefore, RIL said, Mukesh Ambani said, he's going to reduce the debt and almost bring it down to a level of 0. So that mindset of the Reliance Group has brought in lots of M&As. And these are some of the examples. Facebook, say RIL selling 10% stake to Facebook and 7% again to Google. And then RIL itself selling some stake to the other oil companies. These are some of the examples. Now, let me just very briefly tell what is this cross-border mergers and acquisitions. Cross-border M&As are becoming important ways to enhance and then enter into new, say, geographies and then new companies compared to the greenfield mode of entry. Through the strategy of cross-border mergers and acquisitions, companies look for ready-made entry into overseas business and market rather than riskier way of starting afresh and growing organically. This is where I started. Growing organically, you want to expand your capacity, you want to set up a place of manufacture in a new geography, and then you find that it is riskier because you are not familiar with the financial regulations of those countries, you are not familiar with the customer base, you are not familiar with the culture of those companies, and therefore you feel that organic way of growing might be much more riskier and could be time consuming, and therefore you go for cross-border mergers and acquisitions. You have Indian pharmaceutical companies acquiring pharmaceutical companies in USA, Canada, Japan, and then in Europe. So these are the examples. And then IT companies, Indian IT companies taking over the existing smaller entities in the American continent, European continent. These are the examples of cross-border mergers and acquisitions. In recent years, the most eye-catching phenomenon that has been kicking globally is a large amount of cross-border M&As, CB M&As. So the amounts are growing from $1 billion, $816 billion, and now it amounts to about $1.3 trillion in 2018, and it is more than 2 trillion, 1.3 in 2018, more than 2.8 in 2021, if you see the most recent statistics. Therefore, M&As are becoming important ways of growing, especially across the globe, because when there is liberalization measure that is being initiated by different countries, going abroad and setting up a place of manufacture is becoming more easier than it was earlier, and therefore companies have been going to different places in search of maybe new markets, in search of new raw materials, in search of a bigger customer base, and in search of economies of scales like cheap labor, technically qualified and cheap labor. That is how you see China becoming the manufacturing hub of the entire world. It offers cheaper way of production because the cost of production in China is much more much less compared to its counterparts, let's say in America and then entire Europe, and therefore multinational companies have started setting up their place of manufacture in China. This is also something to do with MFN status that US accorded to China for quite a long period of time. Most favored nation status was accorded by the United States of America, even when China was not a member of WTO. Therefore, it was able to attract huge amount of M&A space into China. And this large amount of foreign direct investments that are taking place in different countries is also coming through this M&A space. Now, cross-border mergers and acquisitions in the total global FDI, just take a look at this, 2014 to 2020, and the source is Untitled World Investment Reports. So global FDI and then contribution of cross-border mergers and acquisitions in 2014, global FDI was about $1.23 trillion, and M&As accounted for $432 billion, accounting for about 35% of the global FDIs. 1.76 trillion, 721 billion, and accounting for 41% of the total global FDI. 1.74, 887, 51%. And 2020, we see 1 trillion, slightly coming down because of the lockdowns imposed by different countries. $475 billion, accounting for about 48%. And in 2018, M&As had peaked in different countries, including in India, and 63% of the global FDIs was accounted for by the cross-border mergers and acquisitions, and the deals amounted to about $816 billion from an FDI figure of $1.3 trillion, accounting for 63%. So if you go to UNCTAD, these numbers are available. Now, major motivations for cross-border mergers and acquisitions are almost identical to what we have discussed earlier, but still, even at the cost of repetition, let me just put this figure. Strategic asset seeking, acquiring strategic assets like know-how, patents, production lines, managerial skills, then quick entry into the foreign market. This is another way of this. Then we have high-profile M&As that have taken place around the globe, and one of the participants spoke about this. I have taken some high-profile M&As that have taken place around the globe from this particular source. Please understand, these are not my figures. This is the source from which I have taken, and this is the deal. Now, one of the participants was talking about this. Facebook acquiring WhatsApp for about, I think that number is not visible, but I know the number, $19 billion. Exactly $19.1 billion to be more specific. But when the actual payment was made in terms of the Facebook shares, part payment in terms of the shares of the Facebook being allotted to the WhatsApp promoters, the total deal amounted to about $21 billion. Mega acquisition the world had ever seen. And when I was going through the process of acquisition, and when the bid was made initially, I was reading the financial press. I was simply not able to come to the terms. What is there in WhatsApp for the Facebook to bid for $19.1 billion, a mind-boggling amount? India's foreign exchange reserves at one point of time was not $19.1 billion. Now, of course, it is substantially more, but if you take late 80s and early 90s, you can compare Facebook acquiring WhatsApp, $19.1 billion, the bid, and ultimate payment was more than $21 billion. All of you are familiar with WhatsApp, and if you go and see how did Facebook value this company for such a huge and mammoth amount? Even today, I have not understood what is the logic for this valuation, because you have different ways of valuing the companies. You have the asset base, place a value for all these asset base, and then find out what is the value of a company. Customer base, and then the product base, varieties of these assets that you can assign the value you take. By taking any of these things, the amount does not come anywhere nearer to what the Facebook has bid for the WhatsApp. Therefore, I was simply not able to come to terms. But the fact is, Facebook has paid so much for acquiring WhatsApp. So sometimes what you think as the logic and what you think as the right value may not be the right value for a company which is acquiring. They may have different types of motives, and different types of discussions that go on in the boardroom might induce the companies to pay more. So next deal that we have seen is Google acquiring Motorola, paying $12.5 billion. Microsoft acquiring Skype, paying $8.5 billion. Just see the amounts that they have paid: $8.5 billion, $12.5 billion, and then $19.1 billion. Then Microsoft acquiring Nokia for $7.2 billion, Google acquiring Nest for $3.2 billion. Again, Google DoubleClick, $3.1 billion. Google YouTube, $1.6 billion. Microsoft, Yammer, again this number, Microsoft, Tumblr, then Facebook acquiring Instagram for approximately $1 billion. So if you see the acquisitions, and then if you start using your conventional ways of valuing, assigning value for all these things, that is so many times the EPS of the company, or P multiples of this company, or PB multiples of this company, or so many times the enterprise value, EV, divided by EBITDA of the company. So many times the value. None of these valuation models can actually fit into the type of amounts that the global M&As have paid the different companies, like the Facebook, Google, Microsoft have paid for different things. All of you are using, the navigator. Suppose you are going to a new place, you are putting Google Maps. Google Maps itself was not developed by Google. Somebody developed the maps, and then Google thought that this is the best way to integrate its own technology, and it acquired. So the way Google has grown is not through organic mode alone. They have used inorganic mode to grow. That is true with Facebook. That is true with Microsoft, and that is true with the Reliance Industries that we see in the Indian space, and technology companies that are operating in India. So M&As have given a lot of fillip to the type of, say, enterprise valuations that we have seen. Now, one of the explanations that somebody can give, perhaps for an extraordinary and then the mammoth amount that was paid by Facebook to acquire WhatsApp, is the number of users. The user base, the way the user base has increased from very limited number to a huge number running into millions, is the way they have grown. See, Facebook has grown, Google has grown, Instagram has grown, and WhatsApp growth is substantially higher, stands much higher. And therefore, one of the explanations that you can give for the huge amount that is paid is the customer base, which is running into millions of dollars, millions of numbers, and the number is not declining, number is on the increase. Although competitions have started emerging. Telegram is one of the main competitors for WhatsApp now. So if you want to ward off that type of competition, M&As offer you one of the ways in which you can ward off and then take on the competition head on. So let me now move on to some type of literature just to give you the flavor of the type of research that is taking place in the M&A space. I will introduce some of the literature. This is not an exhaustive literature. In a lecture of this type, I cannot bring in exhaustive literature, but some literature I will be talking about. Previous studies consistently report that target company shareholders are gaining. In M&A space, if you look at the research evidence, there are two broad, wealth creation. When mergers and acquisitions take place, one of the motives for mergers and acquisitions is to create wealth for the shareholders. If you are creating wealth for the shareholders, you have an acquiring company and you have a target company. So the research is taking place from the point of view of the acquiring company and also from the point of view of the target company. So worldwide, the research studies are focused on M&A space of wealth creation for acquiring company, wealth creation for the target companies. So one of the evidences, target company shareholders gain from the M&As. Alexander, and then we have our own paper. If you are interested in reading this paper, it is Mallikarjunappa and Panduranga Nayak, which appeared in Vikalpa. Maybe I'll show some of our results subsequently. Varma and Mitchell, and then we also have some more papers which I will show. Some studies, our studies examining the short-term health effects of these companies have provided relatively inconclusive evidence. Studies on long-term price performance are there. Studies on long-term operating performance of these companies are there. So the literature have examined these spaces. One is what happens to the wealth of the target companies, what happens to the wealth of the acquiring companies. Then wealth has been examined in two different ways. One is the short-term wealth, another one is relatively long-term wealth. Then the second main category is what happens to the operating performance of the companies in the short run and also in the long run. So research is taking place in these areas. Now, commonly used methodology for research on M&As, especially when you are talking about the short-term market reaction and also long-term market reaction, you have two main methodologies that are being used. One is the event study methodology. I'll briefly introduce what is this event study methodology. The other one is BAR methodology. BAR methodology expansion, this is an acronym. BAR is an acronym. When we were students, there was cost accounting by BAR. This is not that BAR. This is buy and hold abnormal returns. AR stands for abnormal returns. BH stands for buy and hold. So short-term market reaction is being studied using the event study methodology. Long-term market reactions is being used, so studied using BAR methodology. Then long-term operating performance is being studied using different accounting measures. Please understand, even the students at the postgraduate level can use these things. These are not confined to the research scholars alone and faculty members alone. Postgraduate students at both MCOM and MBA level can use these methodologies. I am not just advocating, but I have made my students use these methodologies. BAR may be difficult unless you have more time. At least the event study methodology is not difficult, and also long-term operating performance measure is not very difficult. I have seen that my students should use these methodologies. In Mangalore, my students have widely used these things. Here also, I am making our students in Central University of Kerala also, I am making our students use these methodologies. Now, event study methodology is based on the assumption that the market absorbs the information about an event in an efficient and unbiased manner. That is an assumption of an efficient market. Efficient market assumption is the market will absorb any type of information that is forthcoming from any quarter at a faster rate and is reflected in the prices of these companies, that is market prices of these companies. Now, if the market absorbs this information quickly and that is being reflected by the prices of these companies, then somebody who studies these things and finds out that this event has taken place and waits for some time and tries to acquire the company's shares and tries to make the profits out of this, our assumption is he should not be able to make abnormal profits. That is in an efficient market. That is an assumption. That is a hypothesis that the market will not allow an investor to make abnormal profit if it is efficient. So we hypothesize that. Hypothesis is market is efficient. Is that really efficient? Is a research question. So the effects of these can be measured, and there are different, again, studies, and the most famous study is Pharma, French, Roll and Johnson, 1969, who gave, in fact, event study methodology. Brown and Warner, 1982, and then 85. Very good papers. Brown and Warner, 1982, and 85 papers have very good foundation for somebody who is going through these things. Then McKinley, 1997, Kias and Baker, 2008, Young and King, 2017. And I have my own studies, maybe some I will show you. Now, abnormal returns around the announcement dates reflect investors' expectations of future benefits from a particular event. What is this event? Event is, there is a merger and acquisition. That is an event. What is the study? We study whether this merger and acquisition as an event influenced the wealth of two categories of companies, that is target companies and then acquiring company. So from the target company's perspective and then acquiring company perspective, I study. And therefore, this is called as event study methodology. But in the case of operating performance measures, after the companies get merged, we have post-performance measure of a single entity. And if you want to find out how does it get reflected and how do we compare, we had two entities earlier. We have one entity now. So hypothetically assume that I merge those two companies even before the event happens, and therefore I compute weighted average of some of these numbers before the mergers and acquisition take place, and I compare with different ratios the post-merger period. That's one, and then there is also regression methodology of using these things. So this is some type of a number and then mathematics involved. Inevitably, I have to bring in these things. If you are not very familiar with all these numbers, don't get scared. It is easier than what is actually shown. So don't get scared by looking at the sigma numbers and then I varying from 1 to n, R, I, J, T, all those numbers. It's very simple. I'll not read what is written there. ER stands for abnormal return, and then R stands for returns, E, and then in brackets, R stands for expected returns. So abnormal returns is equal to actual returns minus expected returns. This R stands for actual returns, this R stands for expected returns, and this ER stands for abnormal returns. What is the actual return? What is the expected return? Before the event happens, I formulate some expectations. And how do you formulate expectation? I just introduce shortly. So I have expectations of the returns. I have this number. There is actual returns. I have this number. I take the difference between these two numbers. I call that as abnormal return. This resultant number could be either positive or negative. In an efficient market, the expectation of this equation is this should be equal to 0. That is, the returns, actual returns and expected returns should more or less be equal to 0. Is that 0? Is again a research question. And I can formulate hypothesis based on this. Now, how do we formulate expected return? How much time do we have? Madhapa? Somebody is talking. What's?
Yes, sir. Continue, sir. So please continue.
I will mute. Okay, I will unmute.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think my voice is
audible, sir.
Okay. Yeah. How much time do I have so that I can?
So now time is another 20 minutes you take, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. By 1 o'clock we conclude. Yes. With some question answers. Yes.
But we will take some question answers.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Now what is the time?
Now it is 12:20, sir.
12:20.
Okay.
So I can go for another 15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Then I leave the
For
floor.
question answer. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So we have abnormal returns given by the difference between the actual returns and expected returns. And how do we find out these expected returns? There are different ways in which the expected returns can be found out. One is the mean adjusted returns based on the past history of these things. And the other one is the market model. Or what is this market model? I will not get into the details of this, but all of you are familiar with this, but may not be with reference to AMM. All of you are familiar with the simple linear regression y is equal to a plus bx, where y is a dependent variable, x is an independent variable, a is the intercept, b is the slope. So in y is equal to a plus bx, we have a which needs to be found out, b which needs to be found out. And how do you find out this a and b? We have the past history of x variable, y variable, and use two simultaneous equations. Sigma y is equal to na plus b sigma xy is equal to a sigma x plus b sigma x square. These are the two linear equations that we use for finding out the values of a and b. Exactly the same methodology we are using here, but we are putting in terms of R and then alpha beta. This is RIT is return expected on the stock I for period T is given by alpha I, which is equal to, let us say, A in a regression equation, beta I, which is equal to B in a regression equation, and then RMIT. M stands for RM stands for market, I stands for the specific the market period, and then T again stands for the market period. So RIT is equal to alpha I plus beta I into RMIT. This is the equation we use for forming this expectation. So if you estimate what is the return that is expected and take this here, take the difference between actual return that has been given and the expected return, if the difference is larger, that is abnormal returns are higher, we say that market is not efficient, because the hypothesis for an efficient market is it should not allow an investor to earn abnormal return. So the moment it gives abnormal return, it is an indication that market is not efficient. And therefore, we reject our hypothesis, which we have formulated. So that's the way the hypothesis is being formulated. Now to say, is this abnormal return statistically significant? We assess the statistical significance of this by using certain tests. And those tests also you are familiar as students, because you study Z test, you study t-test, you study f-test, you study chi-square test and all those things. So some of those we make use to study this. So we don't take abnormal return of a single stock, we take abnormal returns of large number of stocks that we have used for our study. Let's say if you are using 100 companies, we average it across 100 companies. That is first company's abnormal return for period T plus second company, third company, up to 100 companies we go on adding, divided by 100. This becomes average abnormal returns, AAR. Then we have what is called as CAR values. CAR values stand for cumulative average abnormal returns from period 1 to period 2. So period 1 to period 2, maybe from January 1st to January 30th, that time period that you have chosen. So we average it across the time period. That is why this particular sign, AAR, average abnormal returns over T, varying from period tau 1 to tau 2. So we use some of the parametrics tests proposed by Brown and Warner. Paper was published in 1985. Non-parametric tests like the sign test proposed by Cohen. Then this event study methodology is continued. For assessing the statistical significance of CAR, cumulative average abnormal returns, we use different time periods, and these different time periods need to be justified. I normally use 61-day time period from -30 to +30. Minus stands for prior period, that is period prior to the M&A happening, and +30 stands for post period, that is after the M&A has taken place. Let's say a company merges with another company on 15th of January. 14th January is prior period. 13th January is prior period. So we designate 15th January as 0. Just take a look at this. Here, this graph is the event day. This is our event day, 0. This is our 0. And period prior to this is designated as -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, etc. -30. So this is 0 to -30. That is 30 days prior to January 15th. Similarly, 30 days post January 15th. That is 16th January becomes +1, 17th January becomes +2, 3, 4, 5, etc. All these things. So this is called as the event period. That is event window or event period. So this is the space. Now to test for the significance of all these things, we use certain estimates like I was talking about, A and then B, or in terms of this alpha and then beta value. Now the estimation period that we use is normally -31 to -282. This is an estimation window. This is an event window. That's about event study methodology. Then we have BAR methodology, that is buy and hold methodology for domestic as well as cross-border mergers and acquisition. So BAR is the return on buy and hold investment strategy. The formula for this, again, if you are scared of this formula, don't even look at this formula. I'll tell you what is this BAR. It's a simple number. It is 1 plus RIT, this particular thing, and then this is a Greek alphabet. It is an operator which stands for the product. That is, you need to multiply these things. Previous operator, here, this particular operator is a Greek alphabet sigma, which says that every number followed by this should be added. Here, this is also a Greek alphabet, which says that every number followed by this should be multiplied instead of added. So BAR methodology says this is again some type of an actual return. This is some type of an expected return. And that expected return, normally we call it as either return of the control firm or return of the industry as a whole. It is preferable to use control form, and this is what I normally tell my students, and this is what we have used, control form returns rather than the industry return as a whole. The difference between these two is called as the PAR, that is buy and hold abnormal return. And this buy and hold abnormal returns can also be tested the way we test the abnormal returns and then the CARs. Now, some of our own papers, you can just take a look at this. If somebody is interested, you can please go through this. This paper is written by my research student Ranju PK and Mallikarjuna Patti. Effect of cross-border mergers and acquisitions on shareholder wealth, evidence from Indian high technology industry, South Asian Journal of Business. So this is an ABDC category, C category, this journal. The study examines the shareholder wealth effects of acquired companies and then the target companies, involving 53 outbound and then 37 inbound, say cross-border mergers and acquisitions. It is published in South Asian Journal of Management. Then again, spillover effects of mergers and acquisition announcements on acquiring firms' rivals. What happens to the acquiring firms' rivals? Evidence from India. It is published in Global Business Review. Again, this is a Scopus Index journal, Global Business Review, and ABDCC category. Again, once again, we are trying to find out what happens to the rivals of the acquiring company in this. We have examined 179 acquirers, and we found that acquiring firms and acquiring firms' rivals react positively to the announcement of mergers and acquisitions. The methodology which we have used is identical to what I was trying to say. You have the buy and hold methodology, you have PAR methodology, and you also have the long-term financial performance methodologies. Then we have another paper. I have cited only 3 papers here. If you put my name in the Google and search, we have many more papers. Only some papers I have cited. Study of wealth effect of takeover announcements in India and target company shareholders. This is T. Mallikarjunappa and Panduranga Nayak, published in Vikalpa in 2013, September. This is, in fact, although Vikalpa is a paid journal, now because there is a larger time period, it can be downloaded in your university library. It can be downloaded. This is the executive summary. I will not read the executive summary of these, but I will show you some of our results. Page numbers also I put it here, 23 to 49 is the total. There we have discussed all these methodologies, like the methodology I was talking about. How do we compute AAR? How do we compute CAAR? How do we test using the t-test? How do we test using the z-test? How do we compute abnormal returns? How do we formulate expectation of these things? That is why this journal, this number of pages is more here. It is almost 26 pages in Vikalpa. If you are interested in going through, you can please go through these things. This is the abstract, continued abstract. We have examined 227 companies that were involved, and 61-day event window we have used. These are some of the results. I have not shown all the results. All the results are there in the paper that I have quoted. Now I have put only 2 values. One is the CAR value. Apart from these CAR values themselves are derived based on AAR values, average abnormal returns. And AAR values themselves are derived based on abnormal returns. And again, abnormal returns are derived from R, that is actual returns, and then E of R, that is expected returns. So we have discussed all these things step by step. We have given all these things. So For a beginner, it can be a good one. In fact, initially when we wrote the paper to Vikalpa, we didn't put all those things because we thought that these trivial details should not be put in a journal. But then the review came and said that it is better because large number of people may not know all these nuances, and let it be more beneficial to larger sections of the researchers, and therefore we wrote all those things, step-by-step approaches. These are some of our results. When we use 61-day event period, taking -30 to +30, and use the raw returns, car value is this, that is cumulative average abnormal returns for 61-day event window is this, Z value is this. Then two types of returns we have computed, raw returns and then the log returns. Log returns 274, that is 0.274, and then the Z value is this. Then 51-day, different event window periods we have taken. 51-day, 41-day, 31-day, 21-day, 11 days, 9 days, 7 days, 5 days, then all these numbers. So these are different values of average abnormal returns, cumulative average abnormal returns, and their corresponding net values. So continued again, different event window periods, 31-day, 26 days, and all these things, including 1 day and then 2 days event window also we have taken, and these numbers are reflected here. So Z values in all cases are high, and for the researchers who are interested in knowing whether this Z value is significant or not, the answer is it is significant, because at 5% level, the table value of Z is about 1.96. You can make a comparison, and this Z value is higher than the table value of Z, and therefore we have concluded that the car values are statistically significant, and therefore the market is not efficient. Why? Our expectation and hypothesis is market is efficient, and based on that, AR we have set it as equal to 0. AR, we have set it as equal to 0. And then CAR, we have set it as equal to 0. Is that 0 or all these values 0? That is what we have tested using various tests. So some test values we have given, that is Z values of all these things. And we found that these Z values, computed value of Z, are greater than the table value of Z. And since the computed values of Z are greater than the table values of Z, they fall in the rejection region. And therefore, we reject the null hypothesis that car values are equal to 0. And if we reject the null hypothesis, that is not sufficient. What do you say from this rejection of null hypothesis? We conclude that the rejection of null hypothesis shows that market or investors are able to earn abnormal returns. The presence of abnormal returns in the market is an indication of inefficiency of the market, and therefore we conclude that the market is not efficient. Please understand, we have qualified our statement. In semi-strong form, there are different forms of market efficiency. There is a weak form of efficiency, there is a semi-strong form of efficiency, there is strong form of efficiency, there is super strong form of efficiency. So we have concluded that market is not efficient in semi-strong form. Now there is one very recent and the most interesting study by a professor and also a researcher from IIT Madras, Sivakameshwari Visa and then Tenmudi. This paper is, do home country stability factors matter for domestic and cross-border mergers and acquisitions? A case study of G19 countries. They have examined a large number of samples from 19 different countries, and they have examined whether stability factors impact domestic and also cross-border mergers and acquisitions. This is the abstract of the papers. The political stability, corruption, and then the governance, whether they have impact on cross-border and also domestic mergers and acquisitions. Interesting paper. They have examined about 4,11,403 completed M&A deals from across 19 countries. These are some of the most important conclusions. Domestic acquisitions volumes are driven by low corruption, high governance despite political instability. So instability may not be a very significant factor, but definitely good governance and low corruption is a factor. Increased governance boosts inbound acquisitions followed by corruption and greater political stability. Low corruption drives outbound acquisitions followed by high governance and political stability. Now, the updated results for 2014-15 confirm that low corruption continues to be a unique factor impacting M&A. So the conclusion of this paper is good governance encourages M&As. Low corruption again encourages M&As. Political stability also encourages. But within that, if you want to take threads and then talk, what happens if the corruption is low, governance is very high, but there is political instability? The paper says that low corruption, high governance drives M&A volumes despite political instability. So political stability becomes secondary here if you have very good governance and also low corruption in the country. So these are some of the
thank you, sir.
mergers and acquisitions. I would stop here and leave this floor open for discussion. You can ask.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you have covered topic in a nice way and also highlighted some research inputs, how the student should go about doing some research using two methodologies you have suggested, and also you highlighted the content, some of the papers. One of your paper is really interesting. That would help the students and research scholars to understand the methodology, basic t-test, z-test, etc., all these things. Now I request the participants to ask questions. You can raise hand or you can type it in the chat box. Professor will read the question and answer. Please. Sir, I will raise the questions. You have used two returns. One is log returns and also normal returns. So what is the difference in these two? Where do you convert these returns into log returns, and what is the advantage of that, sir?
Okay. See, raw returns and then log returns. Normally in other papers, you don't find these types of divisions of raw returns and then log returns. But initially when we were discussing, we thought we will examine both these things. Now, what is this raw return? Raw return is simply, we have, let's say, PT, that is price today, minus PT minus 1, that is price prevailing on the previous day if you are taking daily prices. Price prevailing previous month if you are taking previous, say, monthly returns. Previous week if you are taking weekly returns, depending upon the frequency of the data that you have used. Maybe previous second if you are using high frequency data. We have also used high frequency data. We have papers on high frequency data. But of course, one of the problem with high frequency data is it's terribly expensive, very expensive. So unless you have some research grants which can give you some way of purchasing this high frequency data, it's quite expensive, but we have worked on high frequency data. And the computers that you have in your department will not accommodate this high frequency data. You might feel that I have so many rows in Excel, so many columns in Excel, that is not sufficient to accommodate high frequency data. You may have to take the help of somebody in the software industry with little more speed. Maybe i7 computers might be required. Now, what is this raw returns and then log returns? Raw return is T, that is price prevailing today, that is PT, minus price prevailing the previous time, that is PT minus 1, divided by PT minus 1.
Okay.
So it is a simple difference converted into percentage. That is but we call it as raw return. This is our own term.
Okay.
It's not popular in the literature, but this is the term that we have used as raw returns. Then what is this log return? I'll tell you why we have taken and what is the assumption behind that. Log returns. Log returns is ln, that is natural log of pt divided by pt minus 1.
Okay.
That is, we have taken the log returns of these things by taking the ratio of today's price to yesterday's price. Yesterday is previously. pt divided by pt minus 1 ln, that is natural log of natural or Neperian log. Now, why these two returns? In log returns, the assumption is, let's say I'm taking daily frequency data. The assumption is compounding takes place on daily basis. In log returns, the assumption is there is a continuous compounding.
Okay.
So we wanted to compare, does it really make a difference for the market efficiency if we take two forms of raw and then
Log.
So
Log
our
return.
study has shown that it doesn't make a difference. In both cases, market shows inefficiency.
Inefficiency, yes. Okay. Thank you, sir. So participants can raise questions. Chat box open.
You can unmute and then
Ask a questions
ask
also.
questions. That is also fine.
Good afternoon, sir.
Ramesh is asking questions. Sir. Yeah. Ramesh, you please.
Yes, sir. Sir, good afternoon, both of you, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
good afternoon.
Sir,
Since it is being recorded, I would suggest when you are asking question, please introduce yourself and then
Yes.
ask the question.
yes, sir. I'm Dr. Ramesh from Government First Grade College for Women Awesome Coordinator, sir.
Okay.
It's a great attempt made by you and the university, Adeopa sir and registrar sir. Firstly, I thank and congratulate the whole team, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
The concept you are explaining is very rich and unique, sir. The mergers and acquisitions, these are all understanding is very, very difficult, but in the entire slides and the basics, whatever you have given, excellent and marvelous, sir. We will be very grateful to you, sir. We entire MCOM students are listening to you, sir. It is very likely and happily we are listening to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your compliments. Yes.
Yeah. Questions, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. See, what is the impact of these mergers and acquisitions on share prices of the particular company which is taken over, sir?
Yeah. Okay, this is precisely what we have examined in our studies that I quoted. What is the expectation? Expectation is, see, there are two companies here. One is the target company, that is the company which is expected to be merged or taken over or stake sale in anything. And then the other one, the company which is taking over or get the smaller entity merged with itself. So we call this as acquiring company. We have acquiring company, we have target companies. Now, what happens to the share prices of the companies which are target companies? What happens to the share prices of companies which are acquiring companies? This is a research question. And this is precisely what we have tried to examine. And the methodologies that I have suggested, like your event study methodology, PAR methodology, takes this as the raw input for research. So input for research takes into consideration price fluctuations. Do the prices increase of the target companies? Do the prices decrease of, again, target companies? Now, same thing, acquiring company and then target company. I will just cite one example. In October 2016, when Mukesh Ambani spoke in the annual general body meeting, 45-minute speech of Mukesh Ambani in the AGM of Reliance Industries Limited costed 32,000 crores to the investors of this company. What does it mean? If you want, you can go and examine this. The share prices of Reliance Industries nosedive, came down. And if you multiply it by the number of shares, that is the price decline into the number of shares, it amounted to 32,000 crores. So share prices came down. And share prices coming down and multiplied by the number of shares, 32,000 crores. That means there is a wealth loss of 32,000 crores to the shareholders of Reliance Industries. This happened the very next day. On the day of the announcement, the very next day, it happened after Mukesh Ambani's announcement. Why did it happen? It happened because if you want to find out the logic of this, you can go back to this history and then refer. He made an announcement that they are going to enter into telecom business and made an announcement about Jio, entry of Jio. But that announcement itself was not a bad news. Further, he went on in his speech and said, we are going to offer this free of cost. We will not charge you for 3 months. Of course, his objective was much more than that for a longer period, but there were some other issues which I will not get into. Therefore, market took this as a bad news. What is the bad news? You are entering into the telecom space. Telecom space requires large number of tower infrastructure. You are investing crores, thousands of crores into tower infrastructure and various things, but you are not charging anything to the customers. So your revenue model, when people examine, is zero. Cost model runs to thousands of crores. Therefore, it will hit the profitability of the RIL. Market took that as a bad news. Prices went down. It cost 32,000 crores to the shareholders of the company. So prices moving up or moving down is a phenomenon. Now, what does the research evidence say? Research evidence, I did not get into all those details, says if there are more competitors in the bidding process, like what happened in the case of Tata Steel acquiring Chorus, Tata Steel, when they started making bids, their initial bid was substantially less, but there was a Russian company which came in, and then there was a competitive bidding. So the research evidence says more than number of acquiring companies competing for the same target company, more would be the increase in the share prices of the target companies. That is, target company share prices will keep on increasing. Again, more the number of competitors in the bidding process, more would be the loss for the acquiring company shareholders, indicating that the prices of the acquiring company shares might come down because you are increasing your bid price and therefore you are trying to pay more. So that is what is examined in the research. This is just a brief explanation.
So there is no ready-made answer for this. There are multiple dimensions in the how the share prices would improve, move in the directions. Okay, Ramesh, yes. Any other question from the students?
I think I will stop sharing my screen, right?
Yes. Students can raise questions.
Let them ask, because when you do something with the screen, I don't know what will happen. Therefore,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Keep it as it is.
I hope that no questions from the participants. Sir, now we close the session, sir. I think there are no questions from the students.
Let me just ask one or two participants. Can one or two participants come forward and then tell whether you had any value addition to what you have, compared to what your knowledge was? Was there any value addition from this talk?
By this lecture, yes.
Yeah. Any of the participants who can come forward and then tell.
Feedback from students about today's lecture.
Good evening, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Kriti.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, what are all the taxation implications of this merger and acquisition, and also the cross-border merger and acquisition?
Yeah, there are in fact taxation implications. One of the motives for mergers and acquisitions can be the taxation motives. That is, when a company which is loss-making merges with a company which is profit-making, then the consolidated entity can absorb the losses of the merged company, and therefore its total tax go can be reduced because they are able to set off the profits of the existing profit-making company with the losses of the target company which is making loss. So in the IBC space, if you examine, a lot of companies which are referred to IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, you have a whole lot of Reliance, Ambani, say Anil Ambani Group, which are now in the IBC, and then Jain Irrigation is in IBC. There are many companies which are in IBC, and if somebody makes a bid for the takeover of these companies, they will get, one of the benefits of this is they will get benefit of setting off their profits against the losses which this company is incurring right now. I didn't get into the details of the regulatory issues. Who are the regulators for M&As? You have the Reserve Bank of India, you have the SEBI Takeover Code, you have the Income Tax Act, and then you have Contract Act. Varieties of these regulatory issues I didn't get into. Then in the cross-border space, unfortunately, what is happening is there is no uniformity in the taxation laws. For example, profit-making company setting off the losses against the losses of another company, it is allowed in the Income Tax Act of 1961, but similar provisions may not exist elsewhere. The simplest example that I can give is dividends are not taxed in the hands of the individual investors in most of the countries. India also implemented that, but then again we are back into this. So there is no uniformity. Because of this, lots of deals are taking place in different tax havens. I don't know whether you have read something related to Vodafone case, where the CBDT, Central Board of Direct Taxes, had slapped a notice of 12,000 crores on Vodafone. Vodafone contested the CBDT notice, and ultimately Vodafone won. And when Chidambaram was the finance minister of the country, in similar cases, when some of the controversies were going on, Income Tax Act was amended retrospectively from 1961. But companies questioned the veracity of retrospective amendment, and Supreme Court struck down that retrospective amendment. Okay, so yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your enlightening.
It's altogether another dimension.
Yes, sir.
Implications.
It's a very interesting space. No?
Space.
Yeah.
And as you said, there is no uniformity in tax laws around the world, and diversity exists within country and also among the countries. It's a very complex issue. That is a research area for commerce students.
Yes, that's also very interesting research area. Why such huge deals are taking place in tiny countries?
Small countries, yes.
You know, if you examine the FDI flows, Mauritius is accounting for huge FDIs. You go and examine how It is more than even United States of America. Where is Mauritius? Where is
USA? Yes.
yeah, United States of America. But then if you examine the FDI, it's a huge amount. Why? It is something
Because
to do with this taxation issues.
Yes. So it was, some students should answer to professor's question. Professor asked you about the validation of this lecture. You please, any students can come forward and say a few words. Shall I invite? Or you please come forward. Asifia,
Come forward.
Asifia can unmute and tell. Yeah, yes. They're not coming forward, sir.
Not coming forward.
Yes, yes.
So, the entire session was very interesting, and we got to know so many research insights on the topic, that is mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
So usually we got to see the only the factual information about the merger and acquisition, but this session was very interesting and it was thought-provoking. So we extend our heartfelt thanks to you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, this is more of a lecture focused on research, how even commerce students, MCOM students and PhD students or teachers, how do they think about adopting some methodology to understand the issues, burning issues. Mergers and acquisition is everyday issue, means every day we are seeing, and the volume is increasing. Sir has told you with the statistics, value, number of companies going for mergers and acquisition increasing, and also the deal value is also increasing in future days. Sir, I take this opportunity to convey our heartfelt thanks to you, sir. On our request, you accepted our invitation to deliver online lecture because of this pandemic. Otherwise, would have invited you to Manas Gangotri or Hema Gangotri campus. Once or twice you came to Hema Gangotri campus for delivering lectures and seminars. So we are very grateful to you, sir. Your lecture is very thoughtful and it provides inputs to the students and also faculty members to do some research work. On behalf of the University of Mysore and also the participants, I convey my gratitude to you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all, and I have enjoyed. And maybe after the normalcy is restored, let's see, because it was my choice to be online, because we have a lot of border restrictions to cross border from Kerala, and then people are also afraid,
Yes, sir.
Oh, so many so-and-so has come from Kerala, so I don't want to trouble the people. That is why I thought I would come online.
Okay, sir. So we plan for some offline lectures either in Mysore and Hassan, sir, later. Okay. So I also thank our students, teachers, and also research scholars who have logged in and who have attended this online lecture. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can I leave?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So thank you all, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.